On September 20, 1958, King was signing copies of his book Straight Toward Freedom in the Blumstein's department store in the Harlem when he narrowly escaped death. Azola Curie, a mentally ill black woman who thought that King was conspiring against her with the communists, stabbing him in the chest with a letter opener. King underwent emergency surgery with three doctors: Aubrey D. Lambert, Bernard Emily McCorleo, and John W.S.B. Cordick. He remained hospitalized for several weeks. Curie was later found mentally incompetent to stand trial. In 1959, King published a short book called The Measure of a Man, which contained his sermons, What is Man? And the dimensions of the complete life. The sermons argued for man's need for a God's love and criticized the racial injustice of Western civilization. Harry Wastel joined King's legal advisor Clarence B. Jones in defending four ministers of the SCLC in the libel case. New York Times Co. v. Sullivan, and the case was litigated in the reference to the newspaper advertisement had their rising voices. Wastel founded a tax-exempt fund to cover the expenses of the suit and to assist the non-violent civil rights movement through a more effective means of fundraising. This organization was renamed the Gandhi Society for Human Rights. King served as an honorable president for the group. He was displeased with the peace that President Kennedy was using to address the issues of segregation. In 1962, King and the Gandhi Society produced a document that called on the president to follow in the footsteps of the Abraham Lincoln and issue an executive order to deliver a blow for civil rights. As a king of the Second Emancipation Proclamation, Kennedy did not execute the order. The FBI was under written directive from Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy when it began tapping King's telephone line in the fall of 1963. Kennedy was concerned that public allegations of communists in the SCLC would derail the administration's civil rights initiatives. He warned King to discontinue these associations and later felt compelled to issue the written directive that authorized the FBI to wiretap King and other SCLC leaders. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover feared the civil rights movement and investigated the allegation of communist infiltration. When no evidence emerged to support this, the FBI used the incidental details caught on tape over the next 5 years in attempts to force King out of his leadership position in the Guantanamo program. King believed that organized non-violent protest against the system of Southern segregation known as Jim Crow laws would lead to the extensive media coverage of the struggle for black equality and voting rights. Journalist accounts and televised footage of the daily deprivation and indignity of the suffered by Southern blacks and of segregationist violence and the harassments of the civil rights workers and marchers produced a wave of sympathetic public opinion that convinced the majority of the Americans that the civil rights movement was the most important issue in American politics. In the early 1960s, King organized and led marched for black right to vote, desegregation, labor rights, and the other basic civil rights. Most of these civil rights were successfully enacted into the laws in the United States with the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the 1965 Voting Rights Act. King and the SCLC put into practice many of the principles of the Christian left and applied the tactics of non-violent protest with great success by strategically choosing the method of protest and the place in which protests were carried out. There were often dramatic standoffs with segregationist authorities who sometimes turned violent.